Mia Turner had never stepped inside a place like the Waldorf Astoria in her life, and if the email had not looked so official, she would never have dared to come tonight. Not in her rented dress, not in her scuffed heels, and certainly not while carrying the cheap clutch she had bought from a sidewalk vendor in the Bronx on her way to her night shift at the diner just a week earlier. But there she was, pushing open a door that felt heavier than any door she had ever touched and stepping into a golden room full of chandeliers glittering like frozen stars above people who looked as if they had stepped out of magazine covers instead of real life. The instant the soft carpet cushioned her shoes, she felt it. The hush, the shift, the sweep of eyes turning in her direction as though her very presence disturbed some invisible balance, and the quiet ripple of laughter that followed made her spine stiffen and her cheeks heat, though she tried to pretend she did not hear it. A staff member at the entrance examined her dress with a polite, tight smile, murmuring something about dress code, but because her name was on the list, by some mistake, he waved her through gently, and Mia whispered a thank you. Even though her voice shook, and she tried to disappear into the crowd, yet there was no way to hide in a room like this. Not when she stood out like a smudge on a clean window. A volunteer usher found her before she had a chance to retreat and told her with a courteous uncertainty to follow him to her seat, and Mia went because she did not know what else to do, clutching the hope that maybe this mistaken invitation would let her ask someone, anyone, about the medication assistance program that had helped her son Eli last winter. She followed the usher past tables draped in white linens toward a long circular table near the stage. The table with a crystal plaque that read, "Executive Sponsors," and she tried to step back, tried to explain, but the usher gestured firmly. And then she was standing at the edge of the Billionaire table, the place she least belonged. She barely had time to breathe before a voice cut through the room. Smooth, sharp, coated in expensive perfume and entitlement, and the sound was like a knife slipping between her ribs. "Sweetheart, that chair is not for people like you. Please get up. This table is for donors who actually matter." The woman who spoke, Eleanor Whitford, wife of the chairman, a queen in a designer gown, was looking at Mia as though she were a stain to be wiped away, and the people at the table chuckled under their breath, nodding as though Eleanor had said something witty instead of cruel. Mia felt every muscle in her body turn rigid and her skin prickled with humiliation so sharp she could barely swallow, and she stood up quickly, murmuring, "Sorry," even though she had done nothing wrong, her fingers fumbling for her clutch as if she could hide inside it. The laughter grew a little louder, not vicious but amused, the kind of laughter that says you should have known your place. And Mia felt something inside her collapse just a little because she had known she should not have come, and yet she had dared to hope anyway. Dared to think maybe she could find help for Eli. Maybe someone here would care about a little boy who wheezed through the nights. She turned away, ready to flee, before the burning in her throat turned into tears, because if she cried here in front of them, she would never forgive herself, and her steps were quick, uneven, desperate toward the nearest exit. She was perhaps 3 strides from freedom when the back doors opened wide, letting in a gust of cold winter air, and a man stepped through the room, falling into a sudden hush as if the chandeliers themselves recognized him. Noah Grant, the billionaire CEO, whose face she had seen on health tech billboards and news features, moved with a calm authority that drew eyes toward him whether he wanted it or not. His black suit tailored his expression, focused until it shifted, landing on Mia, and then flickering toward Eleanor and the still laughing guests. In that single moment, Mia felt the air change, the laughter die, the whispers silence as Noah took in the scene, and something darkened in his gaze. Not anger exactly, but a deep, unmistakable disapproval that made Eleanor's smile falter. He did not look at the decorations or the donors or the cameras waiting for him near the stage. He looked only at Mia as though trying to understand why she was gripping her clutch like a lifeline, and why she looked like she was moments from breaking. And then, without a word, he began walking toward the table, each step steady, unhurried, and yet marked with a weight that made people instinctively straighten in their seats. Mia froze, unable to move, unable to decide whether to run or stay. And the closer Noah drew, the more she felt seen in a way she had not felt seen in years, not as someone out of place, but as someone wronged. Noah stopped at the edge of the table, his eyes still on the scene that had unfolded before he arrived, and the quiet room seemed to hold its breath. For a long, suspended second, Noah Grant said nothing, and yet the silence around him thickened like snowfall settling over a city, and Mia wished the ground would open beneath her and swallow her whole. Because standing this close to him made everything worse. The humiliation, the shame, the knowledge that someone like him, someone whose name appeared in Forbes and whose innovation saved children's lives, was now staring directly at the woman who had just been told she did not matter. Eleanor Whitford recovered first, smoothing her gown and stepping forward with the confident calm of someone who had never been challenged in a room like this. Her voice floating upward like practiced elegance as she said, "Noah, we handled the situation. She sat at your seat by accident." It was meant to sound like justification, but it landed like an accusation. And Noah's expression did not shift, but his eyes hardened in a way that said he understood exactly what had happened even without witnessing the words. He did not answer Eleanor, and he did not address the donors seated with their glasses half raised like an audience caught in a play they had not rehearsed. Instead, he turned fully to Mia, the harsh lighting softening against his features. His voice smooth, steady, unhurried as he said, "You do not have to stand. This is your seat tonight if you want it." The words felt impossible, like someone had rewritten the script of the night and handed her a new role she had never auditioned for. And for a moment Mia could only stare at him, her breath shallow because no one had ever spoken to her like that, not with quiet authority, not with gentleness woven into strength. The entire table fell silent, the laughter dying so sharply it almost left an echo, and Mia felt small and exposed, and yet strangely protected, as Noah placed his hand on the back of her chair. Not forcing, not insisting, simply offering. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around her clutch because she should leave. She should get Eli's medication refilled tomorrow, she should go back to the life she knew, and yet the weight of the humiliation still burned inside her. And something about Noah's presence steadied her in a way she did not understand. She managed a whisper. "I should not be sitting here." And Noah shook his head once deliberately. "You have every right to sit if you choose to." His tone carried no arrogance, only certainty, and somehow that made it even more disarming. Slowly, as if afraid the chair might vanish beneath her, Mia eased back into the seat, and Noah waited with a patience that contrasted sharply with the stunned faces surrounding them before he sat down beside her close enough that she could feel the subtle steadiness of his presence like a calm heartbeat in the middle of a storm. He rested one hand on the table. Then, noticing how her fingers trembled, he placed his other hand gently over hers, just enough to anchor her, not enough to trap her. Her breath caught in her throat, the contact startling yet grounding, and this time no one at the table laughed. A server approached, clearly anxious about interrupting, but Noah lifted his gaze and the man nearly bowed before retreating. "You do not need to be nervous," Noah murmured, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "They only act powerful because they have forgotten compassion." Mia swallowed the truth of his words settling into her chest like something long missing, and she forced herself to take a slow breath. She glanced sideways at the crystal glasses, the elegantly plated appetizers, the guests watching them with contained shock, and whispered, "You do not even know me." Noah's jaw flexed faintly, and he replied, "I know enough. I know what I saw the moment I walked in. Something unfair happened to you. No one should have to face that alone." She blinked quickly, trying to keep her composure, the humiliation fading, but not forgotten, replaced now by something warmer, something she did not dare name. The donors shifted awkwardly as if waiting for Noah to rejoin their world of polite conversation, but he made no move to leave her side. After a moment, he lifted his chin toward the table, his voice smooth but cool as he addressed them all. "She is my guest." There was no room for argument in those words, and an uneasy murmur traveled around the table as if each of them suddenly remembered that Noah Grant built empires and dismantled them with equal ease, that he was not simply the figurehead of the night, but the reason they were all here: craft cocktails, tuxedos, designer gowns and all. Eleanor attempted a smile, stretching it too tight across her perfectly made face. "Of course, Noah," she said too sweetly. "We meant no offense." Noah's eyes flicked to her, and the faint glint there tightened the air again. "Intent matters less than impact," he replied calmly, and Eleanor lowered her gaze. The orchestra resumed softly in the background, violins threading through the tension like a balm. But Mia felt her pulse still racing, a chaotic mix of disbelief and fear and fragile rising hope. Noah leaned closer, his voice still soft. "If you would prefer to step outside for a moment, we can leave the table." Mia thought of Eli asleep at home in their small apartment, his inhaler always by his bedside, and the reason she had come, the reason she needed help, the reason she had forced herself to walk into this world of glass and marble. She shook her head gently. "I want to stay just long enough to ask someone about the medication program." Noah nodded once as though the answer pleased him. "Then we stay." The donors resumed their conversations, though more quietly now, and the chandeliers cast warm circles of light across the table, but Mia still felt the tremor of nerves in her hands even beneath Noah's steady touch. Across the room, cameras shifted angles, catching glimpses of them together. The billionaire and the single mother and Mia wondered distantly what kind of story people would invent before she even left the building. Noah seemed to sense her spiraling thoughts because he spoke again, grounding her. "They do not control the narrative." He squeezed her hand lightly. "You do." For the first time that night, Mia exhaled fully, the tightness in her chest loosening enough for her to breathe again. And sitting beside Noah Grant, she realized she was no longer thinking about running. She was thinking about surviving. She was thinking about Eli. She was thinking about how someone like Noah could walk into a room full of power and choose to stand beside the person everyone else had pushed aside. And that thought alone steadied her for the rest of the night. For the first few minutes after Noah sat beside her, Mia could barely hear anything over the pounding in her ears, the sound of her own disbelief drowning out the music, the voices and the distant clinking of crystal glasses, as though the entire gala had blurred into a soft, indistinct haze, except for the man sitting next to her, who somehow felt like the only steady point in a spinning room. He leaned slightly toward her, lowering his voice so that only she could hear, and asked gently, "Do you want to leave, or would you rather stay until you find what you came for?" She had not expected the question. She had not expected a choice in a room where she had been treated like an intrusion instead of a guest, and the simple act of being asked what she wanted felt like a hand reaching into a dark corner of her chest and pulling her into the light. She thought of Eli, of the nights he struggled for air, of the medication she barely managed to afford, even with assistance, the reason she had forced herself to step into this world, and after a moment she whispered, "I should stay." Noah nodded once, as though her answer mattered, as though it carried weight and value. "Then we stay." The whispering resumed around them, low, soft, but pointed, the kind that pricked at the edges of Mia's confidence like needles disguised as curiosity. She kept her eyes fixed on the tablecloth, tracing the pattern with her gaze until a new presence approached the table. A woman in a midnight blue suit, impeccably tailored, her posture sharp, her expression composed but undeniably assessing. Victoria Hale was not a woman Mia recognized, but everyone at the table seemed to straighten when she arrived, including Eleanor, who shifted her chair, subtly creating space for her, as though acknowledging an unspoken hierarchy. Victoria leaned down, speaking into Noah's ear with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to managing power. "Your reputation matters tonight," she murmured. "Do not let a mistake follow you." It was not loud enough for the whole table, but Mia heard every syllable, each one slicing cleanly through her fragile composure, and she swallowed hard, unable to keep her shoulders from tightening. Noah did not turn toward Victoria. Instead, he continued slicing the salmon on his plate with deliberate calm, as though her warning were nothing more than a breeze passing by. "I appreciate your concern, Victoria," he said evenly, "but I decide my own reputation." Victoria's eyes flicked toward Mia, a brief evaluation. Cool, quick and cutting, before she straightened without another word and walked toward a group of investors waiting near the stage. In her wake, the pressure at the table thickened, the whispers shifting again from ridicule to speculation, the kind that made Mia's stomach twist. She felt trapped between two worlds, one that mocked her for daring to exist in it, and one she had never imagined would open even a single door for someone like her. When the first course arrived, Mia forced herself to eat, even though the food tasted like air, her throat still tight from the earlier humiliation. Noah noticed her discomfort and spoke softly. "It is all right to feel overwhelmed. They have forgotten what it is like to be human." Mia blinked at his words, not expecting the honesty threaded through them. "You make it sound like you are not one of them," she said, barely above a whisper. Noah's expression softened, the faintest hint of a smile touching the corner of his mouth. "I am not. I grew up in a town with one grocery store and 2 streetlights. My father worked double shifts at a factory. My mother cleaned houses. Their entire lives were spent trying to keep me healthy when hospital bills threatened to swallow everything." Mia's eyes widened. "You were sick." Noah's jaw tightened with memory. "Asthma. Severe. I spent nights in emergency rooms because we could not afford preventive medication." His gaze dropped to her hands, still trembling slightly. "So, I understand more than you think." The words settled over her like a soft blanket, and for the first time she allowed herself to breathe a little deeper. "Maybe you do," she murmured. Noah lifted his wine glass politely, declining the server's offer to refill it before glancing toward the stage where the host announced his upcoming speech. "They will want me up there soon," he said, "but if at any point you want to step outside, I will go with you." Mia shook her head quickly. "I need to stay until I find someone from the assistance program. I cannot afford Eli's inhalers without it." Noah paused, his eyes flickering with an emotion she could not quite name. Worry, frustration, determination. Maybe all 3, but he simply nodded. "You will not leave without the help you came for. I will make sure of it." Moments later, the lights dimmed slightly, signaling that the program was about to begin. The host introduced Noah Grant, President and Chief Executive Officer of Grant Health Technologies, and applause surged across the room like a wave rising toward him. He stood, smoothing his jacket, and before walking toward the stage, he leaned in close enough that Mia felt the warmth of his breath against her cheek as he whispered, "Do not let them decide your worth." Then he stepped into the spotlight, leaving her with a heart beating far too loudly. On stage, Noah's presence transformed, absorbing the room with effortless calm. He spoke not of profits or expansion, but of families who struggled to pay for life-saving treatments, children like he once was, and like Eli who deserved more than a system built for the privileged. Every few sentences, his gaze drifted back to Mia, not in a way that called attention, not romantic, not dramatic, but grounding, as though she anchored something inside him, something that guided the truth he spoke. The cameras followed each shift of his eyes, capturing the subtle connection that tethered 2 worlds beneath the same chandeliers. Mia watched him, her nerves easing with each word he delivered, each reminder that dignity mattered more than status. And, for the first time since stepping into the ballroom, she felt something thaw in her chest. Something fragile, but real, hope that she was not as invisible as the world insisted she was. When he finished, the applause was louder than before, sincere rather than polite. And as Noah returned to the table, the cameras still tracking him, Mia realized he had not simply given a speech. He had drawn a line that everyone in the room could see, and one that somehow placed her on the right side of it. When the gala finally ended, and the golden lights began to dim and the orchestra softened into a final closing melody, Mia felt as though she had lived an entire lifetime inside one evening. One surreal, impossible, shimmering night that should never have belonged to her in the first place, and yet somehow had wrapped around her like a dream she was not ready to wake from. But the chandeliers faded and the guests drifted away, and reality pressed back in until she was once again just Mia Turner, the single mom from the Bronx, standing beside a billionaire who did not seem to remember he was one. Noah guided her through the crowded lobby with a calm, steady presence, never touching her more than necessary, but staying close enough that she could feel him there like a silent shield between her and every curious stare. Outside the hotel, the Manhattan air was cold, sharp, almost cleansing, and Noah opened the back door of a sleek black electric sedan, motioning for her to get in before taking the driver's seat himself, which startled her more than anything had that night. "You drive your own car," she blurted stupidly, and Noah let out a quiet, amused breath. "Only when I want to feel like a real person," he said before navigating into late-night traffic. For several minutes, neither spoke, the city lights rushing past their windows like rivers of fire as Mia tried to gather the courage to speak. She finally managed an apology, her voice small. "I am sorry if I caused any trouble tonight. I really should not have been there." Noah glanced at her as though she had said something absurd. "You did not embarrass me," he said, his voice low, firm, anchored. They embarrassed themselves. She let the words sink in, feeling them press against the bruised parts inside her chest. She turned toward the window, blinking quickly, hoping the reflection would hide her expression because no one had ever defended her in public with such certainty. Not since Eli was born. Not since she had been left to raise him alone. The drive back to the Bronx felt shorter than it should have, and when Noah pulled up in front of her building, a narrow brick complex with flickering hallway lights, Mia felt the familiar weight of self-consciousness settle over her. She reached for the door handle, but before she could rush out, she saw a small shape through the window. Eli was awake, sitting at the living room sofa, rubbing his sleepy eyes, waiting for her. Her heart dropped. "Oh no, he should be asleep," she murmured, pushing the door open, but before she could run inside, the apartment door swung open and Eli stepped out into the hall. His soft pajamas rumpled his hair sticking up. "Mommy," he called out and then froze mid-step when he saw Noah climbing out of the driver's seat. Eli blinked twice, his face brightening with an innocent shock. "You are the helper guy," he exclaimed, pointing at Noah like he had spotted a superhero. The name hit Noah with a soft, surprised laugh, and Mia turned scarlet, feeling heat flash up her neck. But Eli was already hurrying toward Noah with the unfiltered trust only a child could offer. Noah crouched automatically, bringing himself down to eye level, and smiled gently. "I guess I am." Mia hovered a few feet away, unsure whether to interrupt or apologize when Eli reached out to touch the sleeve of Noah's suit, his small fingers brushing the fabric. "I saw your video. He said you showed how the breathing machine works. It helps me. You help a lot of kids." There was no shyness in his voice, only admiration. And something in Noah's face shifted, a flicker of emotion, sharp and fleeting like a shadow crossing a window. "I am glad it helps you," he said quietly. "Kids like you are the reason I made it." Before Mia could say anything, Eli coughed a tight, wheezing cough, and Noah's body tensed instantly, his expression tightening with concern. "Is he all right?" Noah asked, turning to her. "It is the cold air," she said quickly. "He just needs the inhaler." Noah nodded, but the worry did not fade. He watched Eli wobble sleepily back inside and then turned to Mia, his voice suddenly careful. "If he ever struggles with breathing at night, call me. I mean it." She hesitated, then nodded, because she could tell he was not offering out of pity but recognition, memory, maybe even guilt. She stepped inside, trying to regain her composure, but Noah followed only as far as the doorway, looking into the small apartment where the living room and kitchen blurred into one space, the light soft, the furniture slightly worn but filled with warmth. Mia felt vulnerable and exposed, imagining how the cramped room must look to him, a man who sat at gala tables draped in silk and lit by chandeliers. "I know it is small," she murmured, embarrassed. Noah shook his head firmly. "Warmth matters more than square footage." She stared at him, uncertain whether to believe he meant it, but his expression was sincere and steady, and something about that steadiness loosened a knot inside her. Eli returned with his sketchbook, flopping it open and showing a drawing of a robot-shaped inhaler, firing beams like a superhero. Mia laughed softly, but Noah's breath caught almost imperceptibly as he looked at the drawing with a strange, quiet intimacy. "My dad," he said after a moment, "had asthma too. We could not afford treatments back then." He paused, clearing his throat. He did not make it. The room stilled, and Mia felt her heart twist, not from pity but from understanding the invisible threads that suddenly connected their worlds. "I am sorry," she whispered. Noah nodded once, then turned to Eli, admiring the drawing with genuine interest, asking questions about the robot, and listening as if nothing else in the world mattered. Something in the softness of his attention unsettled Mia in a way she could not explain. When Eli finally grew tired, Mia guided him toward his bedroom, mouthing a thank you to Noah for staying, even though she sensed he did not feel he deserved any gratitude. She returned to the living room to find him standing by the door, his hands in his pockets, his expression contemplative as though he was memorizing the quiet warmth of the apartment. He handed her a simple white card with his direct number on it. "If Eli's breathing worsens, or if you ever need help with anything related to his treatment, call me anytime." She accepted the card, her fingers brushing his, and something sparked there, fragile, unexpected, and far too dangerous. Noah stepped back, nodding lightly. "Good night, Mia." She swallowed. "Good night, Noah." And when he left, closing the door softly behind him, she realized her heart was still racing. Not from fear, not from humiliation, but from something else. Something she did not dare name. Outside, Noah lingered for a few seconds, glancing back at the window, the warm glow spilling through the curtains before finally turning away, walking into the cold night as though he was leaving something behind, even though he found himself glancing back twice, maybe 3 times before disappearing down the street. The next evening came faster than Mia expected, and though she tried to convince herself that Noah Grant would never show up again, that she had misread the weight in his eyes, the softness in his voice, and the way he lingered outside her building, she found herself cleaning her living room twice, fluffing cushions and wiping the tiny kitchen counter until it gleamed, even though she knew how ridiculous it was to prepare anything for someone like him. She told herself it was for Eli, who liked the apartment tidy when doing his drawings, and she kept repeating this until she almost believed it. But when a knock sounded on her door at exactly 8:30, her breath caught in her throat and all the arguments she had rehearsed vanished. She opened the door expecting to see perhaps a delivery driver or a neighbor, but instead there stood Noah in a dark coat dusted with the chilled air of early winter, holding a small toolkit and a brown paper bag from a local bakery, the kind she never bought from, because everything cost too much. "Hi, Mia," he said softly as if entering a sacred place, and she blinked in confusion, unsure how to process the sight of a billionaire in her dimly lit hallway. "What are you doing here?" she asked, because it was the only question her mind could produce. "You mentioned your nebulizer is old," he said, holding up the toolkit, "and I thought maybe I could take a look." She stared at the bag in his other hand, and the bakery box. Noah shrugged, looking almost shy, which seemed impossible. "I figured visiting your home empty-handed would be rude." She did not know whether to laugh or hide her face, but she stepped aside, letting him in, and felt the familiar embarrassment rush through her as he entered the small apartment, one that held childhood drawings on the fridge, mismatched plates on the drying rack, and the slight lingering scent of Eli's vapor rub. Noah walked inside quietly, his eyes scanning the space with an expression not of superiority or pity, but warmth. The kind of warmth that recognized how much effort she put into making a small, crowded place feel like a home. "It is cozy," he said genuinely, and Mia felt her cheeks warm. "That is the polite word for small," she said lightly. Noah shook his head. "Cozy is the word for lived in with love." She swallowed hard, her lungs tightening a little because she had never heard anyone describe her home that way. Eli peeked out from his bedroom door, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Is the helper guy here again?" he asked, blinking up at Noah. Noah knelt down instantly, bringing himself eye level in a way that made something inside Mia melt even before he spoke. "I came to check your breathing machine," he said gently. "Want to help?" Eli nodded excitedly, grabbing his robot inhaler drawing from his shelf and running over, while the two of them moved toward the small corner where the nebulizer sat. Mia watched them with a mixture of awe and nerves. Noah carefully examined the machine, his brow furrowing as he unscrewed the top panel and tilted the device in his hands. "This model is more than 10 years old," he said quietly. "It should have been replaced a long time ago." Mia folded her arms tightly, trying to defend herself even though he had not accused her of anything. The program only covered basic rentals, she said, and the donation center had nothing newer. Noah paused, glancing at her with eyes that softened not with pity, but with understanding. "I know," he murmured. "I grew up with machines like these. They do not always work when you need them most." Eli climbed into Noah's lap without hesitation, pointing at a small gear and declaring it the robot power core, and Noah chuckled a deep, warm sound Mia had not heard from him before. "You are brilliant," Noah told him, and Eli giggled proudly. The small apartment filled with the soft domestic warmth of something almost too fragile to touch, and Mia found herself leaning against the wall just watching the two of them together, wondering how life had shifted so quickly in ways she could not explain. After a few minutes, Noah reassembled the machine and ran a test. "The output is weak," he said, "but it will work for now. I will help you apply for the assistance program again, and if they do not respond fast enough, I will find another option." Mia shook her head quickly, panic flashing through her. "Noah, you cannot. I cannot owe you anything. He looked up sharply from the nebulizer, his expression steady. "Helping your son is not something you owe me for. It is something that should already be guaranteed." She felt something tighten in her throat at his conviction. "You talk like you remember what it is like," she whispered. He lowered his gaze, the faintest shadow crossing his features. "I do. More than I care to admit." For a moment, neither spoke, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable, and Mia realized she was beginning to see pieces of the man behind the headlines, behind the speeches and the gala lights. He stood after a while, brushing dust from his pants, and turned toward the small kitchen where Eli had already opened the bakery box wide, revealing 3 perfect pastries topped with powdered sugar. "Are these for us?" Eli asked, as though he had been handed treasure. Noah smiled softly. "Only if your mom says yes." Mia hesitated, but one look at Eli's wide, hopeful eyes broke her resistance. "Just one each," she said, and Eli cheered, taking the smallest one and handing the biggest piece to Noah, completely unaware of the absurdity of offering a billionaire the largest share. Noah accepted it without hesitation, taking a careful bite and letting crumbs fall on his lap while Eli laughed, and Mia felt her chest warm in a way that was both terrifying and gentle. After dessert, Eli climbed back into his room, humming to himself, and Mia began clearing the small table, but Noah reached out, touching her wrist lightly, stopping her. "Let it be," he said softly. "Sit with me for a moment." She hesitated, then sank into the chair across from him, and he studied her with a quiet intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but instead made her feel strangely seen. "You work nights," he said softly. "Do you ever sleep?" She shrugged sometimes. He leaned back, thinking for a moment. "You are carrying too much alone," he said. "The world should not be built that way." Her eyes prickled unexpectedly, but she blinked the feeling away, not wanting him to witness the cracks in her armor. "You barely know me," she said. Noah considered her carefully. "I know enough to see that you are strong and tired, and someone needs to help you carry the weight." She wanted to argue, but the sincerity in his voice left her without words. When Noah finally stood to leave, it was nearly 2 in the morning, and the neighborhood outside was quiet and cold. He paused at the door, glancing around the apartment one last time as though memorizing its corners before meeting her gaze with an expression she could not decipher. "Thank you for letting me in," he said quietly. She managed a small smile. "Thank you for fixing the machine." He nodded once, then stepped into the hallway, and as he walked toward the stairs, Mia watched him glance back not once but twice, his eyes lingering on the warm glow spilling from her doorway before he finally disappeared into the night, leaving behind a silence that felt strangely full. By the next morning, the world Mia had tried so hard to keep small and manageable cracked open in ways she never saw coming because, while she walked Eli to school with his inhaler tucked inside the front pocket of his backpack and hurried toward the diner for her shift, the internet was already devouring the gala photos like wildfire sweeping through dry grass. She did not notice it at first, not until she arrived at work and felt the shift in the air, the awkward hush that followed her through the kitchen doors, and the tight smirks exchanged between coworkers who usually ignored her. Her manager barely looked at her before muttering under his breath, "So you had dinner with a billionaire last night, huh?" as though the words tasted sour. Mia blinked confused until another server shoved her phone in front of her face, showing a picture that made her knees nearly buckle. It was her and Noah sitting side by side at the gala, his hand covering hers, angles soft but unmistakable, the lighting making the gesture look even more intimate than it had felt, and the caption plastered above the photo read, "Mystery Woman at the Billionaire Gala." Who is she really? Her stomach dropped and heat flooded her cheeks. She had never imagined anyone would care enough to take a picture of them, let alone post it for millions to analyze. Before she could process it, a customer walked by, whispering loud enough for the entire hallway to hear, "Looks like the billionaire likes charity cases." Laughter followed, and Mia's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to sink into the tile floor, disappear, become invisible again. Anything but this unwanted spotlight that twisted her into a caricature she never asked to play. Meanwhile, in a glass tower high above the city, Noah Grant was being called into Conference Room 3, where board members and senior executives waited with tight expressions and carefully arranged concern. Victoria Hale stood at the front, her arms crossed, a tablet in hand, her face unreadable. As Noah entered, she tapped the screen projecting headlines onto the wall like battlefield flags. Noah Grant photographed with mystery woman at exclusive gala. Billionaire seen holding hands with unknown single mother. Investors question CEO judgment before merger. The tension in the room was thick enough to slice. Noah remained calm, leaning against the conference table, his expression composed as the room buzzed with thinly veiled accusations. Victoria kept her voice low, but razor sharp. "You cannot be involved with someone who jeopardizes investor trust," she said. "We are days away from the merger vote, and stability is crucial." Noah stared at her with cool, controlled displeasure. "A photo of me speaking to someone jeopardizes trust?" he asked. Leaning into the silence, she replied, "Some women see powerful men as solutions. I am suggesting caution for the sake of the company." She paused, then added quietly, "And yours." Another board member chimed in with forced concern. "We just need you to be careful, Noah. The optics are complicated." Noah straightened. "Optics change depending on who is holding the camera." Victoria did not flinch. "You know as well as I do that the investor's daughter has admired you for years. Her family supports the merger. A public connection between you could solidify that influence." Noah's jaw clenched. "Stop right there. I have no interest in forming relationships to secure votes." Victoria held his gaze unblinking. "And I have no interest in watching you destroy your own legacy because you are distracted." That was enough. Noah pushed away from the table, his voice controlled but colder than the city skyline. "I am not discussing my personal life in a boardroom." He left before anyone could respond, and the door clicked shut behind him with the weight of a warning buried inside it. By late afternoon, the whispers had multiplied. Mia was washing dishes at the diner when two coworkers passed behind her intentionally loud. "Can you believe it? She probably planned the whole thing. Women like her always chase the rich ones." Mia's chest tightened, a sour knot forming inside her, and when her manager pulled her aside, his face stiff, she already knew what was coming. "The attention you're getting," he said, choosing each word carefully, "is creating disruption in the restaurant. Customers are talking more about you than the menu. We cannot have that." She stared at him. "Is this because of a picture?" He sighed heavily, avoiding her eyes. "You should take your things, Mia. We have to let you go." It felt like being gutted standing there with dishwater still clinging to her hands, but she swallowed the lump rising in her throat, held her chin steady, and left the diner without arguing because she could not afford to break, not now. She walked home in a fog, the world blurring around her until she reached the cracked steps of her apartment building and sat down, pressing her palms to her eyes, trying to keep the panic from swallowing her. Her phone buzzed with unknown numbers, texts from strangers' messages she did not want to read. Billionaire chaser, gold digger, opportunist, words that stabbed without mercy. She turned off the phone, tossing it beside her as tears threatened to slip free, but she refused to cry in public. Not here, not like this. She sat frozen until footsteps approached, slow, intentional, and familiar enough that her breath hitched. She lifted her gaze, and there was Noah standing in front of her, still in his suit from the morning, but with an expression she had not seen on him before, something raw, something quietly furious. "I saw the headlines," he said, his voice low, "and the comments." Mia shook her head, trying to keep distance. "Noah, you cannot be here. You are making everything worse." The corner of his mouth tightened, but he did not back away. "You do not deserve to face this alone." She clenched her fists. "I cannot lose any more, Noah. I just lost my job. Eli saw paparazzi outside his school today. This is not normal. This is dangerous. For him, for me, and for you." Noah's eyes hardened in a way that made her chest twist. "I do not care about danger," he said. "I care about what is right." She met his gaze, and the hurt inside her burst through. "Then, please," she whispered, voice breaking, "stop helping me. You are making my life harder." The words felt like knives even as she said them, slicing cleanly through the fragile connection forming between them. Noah inhaled sharply, pain flickering across his features before he masked it with practiced calm. "If that is what you want," he said, voice soft but trembling at the edges. "I will respect it." He looked at her one last time as though memorizing the shape of her face, the hurt in her eyes, the way she clutched the railing as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Then he stepped back, turned, and walked away, disappearing into the cold evening shadows. And Mia stood on the steps, shivering in the gathering dark, feeling the weight of her own choice crushing her, even though she had said it to protect the one thing that mattered most, Eli. The night Mia's world tilted began quietly with the soft hum of the old radiator and the faint glow of a street lamp flickering through the blinds, casting thin bars of light across Eli's bedroom door, while Mia sat at the small kitchen table, sorting through bills she already knew she could not pay. The silence felt heavy, the kind that presses against your ribs until you cannot tell whether the ache is from fear or exhaustion, and she kept checking the clock every few minutes, waiting for her heartbeat to steady after the chaos of the day. But it never did. She finally rose to peek into Eli's room, finding him curled beneath his faded superhero blanket chest, rising and falling in the shallow, uneven rhythm she had memorized too well. The rhythm that sometimes shifted into something dangerous, something life-altering. She brushed his hair gently, praying tonight would not be one of those nights. She should have known better. Around 4 in the morning, she jerked awake at the sound of a cough sharp and tight, the kind that scraped the air from his lungs, and she leapt from the couch in panic. Eli sat upright, his eyes wide with fear, both hands pressed to his chest as he struggled for breath, the wheezing high-pitched and desperate. Mia grabbed the inhaler, shaking it hard, whispering, "It is okay, baby. Just breathe for me." But when she pressed the mask against his face, the machine sputtered weakly, almost useless, and Eli's breaths came shorter, faster, more frantic. The room blurred around her as cold terror flooded her veins. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so violently she almost dropped it. She could call an ambulance, but response times were unpredictable, and she could not risk waiting. She could call the program office, but they would not answer until morning. She could call no one. Except she knew exactly who would answer, even though she had told him to stay away, even though every logical part of her screamed not to involve him. Her thumb hovered for half a second before she pressed Noah's number. The phone rang once, twice, then his voice came through low alert, heavy with sleep, but instantly focused. "Mia, what is wrong?" She choked out the words. "It is Eli. He cannot breathe. The machine is failing. I do not know what to do." Noah did not hesitate. "I am on my way. Do not wait outside. Keep him upright. Keep talking to him. I am coming." She barely had time to gather Eli in her arms when she heard a car screech to a stop outside the building and heavy footsteps pounding up the stairs. Noah burst into the apartment, coat unbuttoned, breath visible in the cold air, his expression fierce with worry. "Give him to me," he said, already crossing the room. Mia handed Eli over as Noah positioned him carefully, holding his tiny body with instinctive experience, keeping him elevated while checking his breathing with gentle, steady hands. "We need to get him to the ER now," he said, already moving toward the door. Mia grabbed her coat, rushing after them as Noah carried Eli down the stairwell, cradling him close, murmuring soothing words meant to calm the panic in the boy's eyes. The moment they reached the car, Noah settled Eli in the back seat. Mia climbed beside him, and Noah drove faster than she imagined a man like him ever would. Every red light a threat, every second too long. "Breath, baby," Noah said softly. "Keep breathing. You are safe. Mom is here. You are safe." The words were meant for Eli, but Mia felt them too, wrapping around her like a fragile shield against the terror clawing at her chest. At the hospital, everything blurred. Nurses rushed forward, pulling Eli from her arms, hooking him to monitors, oxygen flowing, and she stood frozen at the edge of the room, her heart slamming against her ribs, unable to breathe until she felt a hand on her back, grounding her. Noah stood beside her, silent, steady. His presence a wall against the fear threatening to swallow her. Hours passed in fragments. Doctors in and out. Questions asked and answered, machines beeping at constant intervals until finally the doctor approached with a tired, kind smile. "He is stable now," the doctor said. "The cold triggered a severe flare-up. He needs a new machine immediately. Mia nodded, numb relief flooding her so suddenly she swayed. Noah caught her elbow, steadying her without a word. They were placed in a small observation room where Eli slept curled beneath a thin hospital blanket, his breaths soft and even now. But every rise and fall felt sacred to Mia as she watched him through blurry eyes. She sank into the plastic chair beside the bed, her exhaustion hitting her like a collapsing wave, and before she could stop herself, she fell forward, resting her forehead against the rail, trembling with leftover fear. Noah lowered himself into the chair beside her, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the heat of him, a silent reminder that she was not alone. After a long moment, he spoke quietly. "You did everything right tonight." She laughed weakly, wiping at her eyes. "I called you after telling you to stay away. That is not doing things right." Noah shook his head. "You called because you love him. Nothing else matters." She turned toward him, her eyes red from tears, exhaustion, pain, and something softer, something she did not want to name. "Why did you come so fast?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Noah looked at Eli, then at her, his expression unguarded in a way she had never seen. "Because I know what it feels like to be a child struggling to breathe," he said softly. "And because when you call I come." Her breath caught and she looked down, afraid he would see too much in her eyes. They sat in quiet stillness, the hum of machines filling the room until Eli stirred, awakening just enough to blink sleepily. Noah leaned forward immediately, and Eli focused on him with surprising clarity, whispering in a raspy breath, "You make Mom less scared." The words struck like an arrow, clean and deep, and Mia covered her mouth, trembling as Noah froze the emotion flickering across his face, raw, pure, and unfiltered. He reached forward, brushing a gentle hand through Eli's hair, and whispered, "And you make me want to try harder." Eli's eyes drifted shut again, leaving the room steeped in a fragile warmth, as though something invisible had shifted among the three of them, changing the shape of the air itself. Mia watched Noah, his profile outlined by the dim hospital light. His eyes fixed on Eli with a tenderness she never expected from a man so powerful, and her chest tightened with a feeling she could not control, a feeling she feared and needed all at once. Hours later, as dawn began to touch the windows, she opened her eyes from an unintended sleep, and the first thing she saw was Noah still awake, still watching over Eli, his posture weary yet unwavering, as though leaving was never an option. And in that moment, something inside her broke open, a quiet realization she was not ready to face, but could no longer deny. Noah Grant did not just help them, he stayed. By the time Mia and Noah left the hospital, the sun had already climbed above the Bronx skyline, casting pale gold across the streets still slick from the night frost. And though Eli was stable enough to return home with a new temporary inhaler, the weight of the exhaustion pressing over Mia's shoulders felt heavier than anything she had carried before. She kept glancing at Noah as they walked toward his car, the early light softening the sharp lines of his face, making him look almost too human for someone the world insisted on calling untouchable. But she forced herself to stay quiet because every moment of comfort she felt near him made her more afraid of how much she could lose. When Noah drove her home, the city felt strangely still, as if holding its breath, and Mia tried to savor the brief peace, but it shattered the moment she saw the small cluster of people waiting outside her building. Cameras, phones, microphones, raised like weapons ready to strike. Her body froze. "Oh no," she whispered, clutching Eli closer while he slept limp against her shoulder. Noah's eyes darkened instantly, jaw tightening as he slowed the car, scanning the crowd with controlled irritation. "Stay in the car," he said firmly. "I will get them away." But Mia shook her head, panic rising like a tide. "If they see you, they will think the worst. We should sneak through the back." Noah hesitated, clearly wanting to protect her directly, but he nodded because he understood the danger of being spotted with her again. He drove around to the rear alley, a narrow path where broken crates and trash bins lined the walls, and parked behind the building. Mia hurried up the stairs, keeping Eli close while Noah walked slightly behind her, alert, watching for movement, and when they reached her door he paused, making sure no one had followed. Only when she was safely inside did he exhale. Mia gently laid Eli on the couch, his breathing steady at last, then stepped back toward Noah, who stood just inside the doorway, his gaze softening as he watched her tuck the blanket around her son. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not know how to repay you. You do not owe me anything," Noah said, his voice quiet. "I care about Eli and I care about you. That is enough." Her throat tightened painfully, but before she could respond, a sharp knock banged against the front door, making her jump. Noah stepped protectively forward, but Mia caught his arm, panicked. "Do not let them see you," she whispered. "You cannot be here." He hesitated, and she saw the conflict in his eyes, but he moved quickly into the kitchen, hiding from sight, while Mia opened the door only a crack. A woman with a camera stood there, smiling wide in a way that made Mia's skin crawl. "Hi, Mia. Turner?" "Right. We are doing a story on your relationship." Mia slammed the door before the woman could finish and locked it, her breath shaking. "This is out of control," she whispered. Noah stepped out from the shadows, his expression carved with frustration. "They should not be here." Mia pressed her hands to her forehead. "Please, Noah. You being here will just make it worse." He froze at the words, and she hated the way his face flickered with hurt even for a moment. "I will make sure you are safe," he said after a moment. "I will talk to security teams near the building. I will do whatever it takes." She shook her head. "That is exactly the problem. Every time you help me, more cameras show up, more rumors, more people talk." Noah took a step forward, his voice deepening. "I do not care about rumors, Mia. I care about what is right." She closed her eyes, hating the truth in his words but knowing it would not protect her. She would always be the one who paid the price, not him. The next few hours were a blur of knocks, voices, footsteps, and camera flashes crawling along the hallway like an infestation. Mia refused to open the door again, terrified Eli would wake into a nightmare. Her phone buzzed nonstop with messages from numbers she did not know, strangers calling her names. Insults tumbling one after another. Gold digger, opportunist, social climber. She curled against the wall, pressing her hands to her ears, but even then she could not block out the noise. Meanwhile, across the city, Noah stepped into a board meeting that felt like an interrogation room disguised with glass windows and polished floors. The moment he sat down, Victoria Hale activated the screen behind her, revealing a slideshow of headlines from morning news outlets, each more invasive than the last. Who is the woman holding Noah Grant's hand? Single mother sparks scandal. Investors express concern over CEO's judgment. Victoria's voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut through steel. "This is damaging the company, Noah. You cannot be seen with someone whose life invites instability." He did not raise his voice, but the chill in his tone was unmistakable. "Protecting a child is never damaging." Victoria's brow barely lifted. "The public does not see nuance. They see the consequence. The merger is at risk. Potential partners are backing away. You need to consider the larger picture." Noah stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. "I am considering the picture, and the picture shows a sick child who needs help and a mother doing everything she can to keep him alive. If that is controversial, then the problem is not me, it is the system." His words stunned the room, but Victoria only stared at him quietly. "You are risking everything for this woman," she said softly. Noah's eyes hardened. "I am protecting a family who deserves better." But the longer he stood there, the clearer it became that the company, the investors, the entire world wanted to shape his choices for him, and for the first time he wondered whether he could continue leading without losing the parts of himself that still remembered where he came from. That afternoon, Mia walked to the diner, hoping to speak with her manager again, explain the situation, beg for another chance, but when she stepped inside, conversation stopped abruptly. Her former co-workers stared at her with amusement, pity, or annoyance, and her manager only shook his head. "I am sorry, Mia," he said. "With the attention and the customers complaining, we just cannot bring you back." She nodded mutely, feeling the humiliation crawl under her skin again. She left without saying another word, walking blindly down the street until her legs ached, until she could no longer hold the tears in, and then she ducked into an alley, letting herself cry in silence where no one could see except the cold bricks and the fading daylight. When she returned home, she found Noah waiting near the back entrance, hands in his pockets, face shadowed with concern as he stepped toward her quietly. "I know you asked me not to come," he said gently, "but I could not leave you alone today." She shook her head, voice cracking. "I cannot do this, Noah. I cannot let you destroy your life for someone like me." He stepped closer, his voice grounding. "You are not destroying anything, and you are not someone like anything. You are Mia, and you matter." She wanted so badly to believe him, wanted to lean into the warmth he offered, but the fear inside her was louder. "Noah," she whispered, trembling. "Please, I cannot take any more damage." He inhaled slowly as if bracing against a blow. "If walking away helps you, I will. But do not ever think this is your fault." The pain in his voice sliced into her, but she forced herself to turn away because Eli deserved safety, even if she had to break her own heart to protect him. Noah lingered in the doorway, the light catching the grief in his eyes before he finally stepped back, swallowed his own hurt, and left, disappearing into the night where the world he commanded waited to demand more sacrifices. She was terrified he might be willing to make. The video appeared online before Mia even knew a camera had been pointed at her that night at the gala, a shaky clip barely 30 seconds long, but sharp enough to slice open old wounds and expose every moment she wished she could erase. It showed Eleanor Whitford Orne leaning over her with that cold, polished smile, telling her to stand up, telling her she did not belong, telling her the seat was reserved for people who actually mattered, and though the audio was grainy, the humiliation rang through clearly enough that millions of strangers felt entitled to judge her within minutes. Mia discovered the video only when a neighbor knocked on her door asking, "Wide-eyed, is that really you?" And when Mia grabbed her phone, the clip blared across her screen, freezing her breath in her throat as comment after comment poured in faster than she could read. Some voices defended her, calling Eleanor cruel, calling the room toxic, but others, sharper, louder, more venomous, cut deeper than anything she had heard in real life. She should not have been there. Women like her love attention. Another gold digger trying to climb. She does not look like she belongs at a table like that anyway. Mia pressed a trembling hand over her mouth, fighting the urge to throw the phone across the room. Her reflection in the dark glass screen looked distorted. Her eyes too bright. Her face pale as if she were watching a stranger's humiliation instead of her own. Eli padded into the living room, then, still in pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes and carrying a stuffed giraffe by one leg. "Mom, why are you crying?" he asked. Voice small and innocent, and the question shattered her composure completely. She pulled him into her lap, burying her face in his hair, whispering, "I'm okay, baby. I am okay," even though her voice broke and her hands shook. Eli did not move away. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her neck, holding tight in the quiet way children comfort without needing instructions. When she finally loosened her grip, he looked at her with that deep, unfiltered empathy she wished the world understood. "Do people think you are bad?" he asked. "No," she said quickly. "They just do not know the truth." Eli frowned as though considering this, then slipped away for a moment, leaving her confused until he returned holding a piece of paper, his crayon still warm from his small hands. He placed the drawing gently in her lap. It showed 3 stick figures standing beneath a sun. One figure labeled Mom, one labeled Me, and the third, drawn with careful attention, wearing a black suit and big, kind eyes. Over their heads he had written crooked but clear, "The man who saved us." Mia's breath caught her vision blurring as the full force of the moment hit her. She pressed the drawing to her chest, trembling with an emotion deeper than humiliation, something closer to fierce, aching love. "Thank you," she whispered, brushing Eli's cheek. "You gave me exactly what I needed." And yet, as beautiful as the moment was, it did not erase the reality waiting outside her front door. That evening, as she stepped down the hallway to take out the trash, she saw a shadow near the stairs, and her heart jumped before her mind registered the familiar broad shoulders, the careful stance, the quiet presence. Noah. He stood a few feet away, his expression tight, unreadable, holding a grocery bag filled with essentials he must have bought on impulse. He opened his mouth to speak, but Mia froze, instinct pushing her backward because every time he got close the world retaliated against her. Noah's jaw tightened as if he sensed her retreat. "I am not here to intrude," he said softly. "I just wanted to make sure you two were holding up." She exhaled sharply, clutching the trash bag to her chest as though it could shield her from the emotions twisting inside her. "You saw the video," she said. It was not a question. Noah nodded, once his expression dark. "I saw enough to know that what happened to you was wrong." Mia laughed weakly, a sound that tasted like salt and bitterness. "The entire country seems to think I am the problem." Noah took a step closer but stopped himself, hands curling into fists at his sides. "You are not the problem, Mia. You were humiliated by people who hide their cruelty beneath wealth. And now the internet is doing what it always does: punish the wrong person." She wanted to believe him, but every insult she had read, every accusation, every cruel comment felt like a stone added to the weight she already carried. "You do not understand," she whispered. "I lost my job because of this." Eli saw people with cameras at his school. "Everyone assumes the worst the moment they see me near you." Noah's voice dropped lower, steady, almost pleading. "Then let me help. Let me fix this." She shook her head, desperation rising. "Noah, you cannot fix people's hatred. You cannot control what strangers think I am. It is too big." Noah inhaled sharply, his expression pained but controlled. "I cannot stand by while your dignity is torn apart by people who know nothing about you." Mia felt tears building again, but she forced them back. "Dignity," she whispered. "I lost that the moment they recorded me being treated like I was less than human." "You did not lose it," Noah said firmly. "They tried to take it, but you still have it. It lives in how you protect Eli, how you keep going, how you hold your head up even when the world pushes it down." His words sank deep, but did not unburden her because the truth she carried was heavier than any praise. "You are still Noah Grant," she said, voice unsteady. "You walk into a room and everything bends around you. I walk into a room and they laugh. We are not the same." Noah's shoulders tensed at the words, his jaw tightening as though she had struck him. "I know we come from different worlds, Mia, but I would never let you stand alone in this." And yet she could not let him come closer, not while Eli's safety dangled between their intersecting lives. The hallway fell silent except for the hum of the overhead light, and Mia forced herself to step back inch by inch until her apartment door pressed against her spine. Noah's eyes followed her retreat, filled with worry, frustration, and a quiet pain that mirrored her own. When she reached for the doorknob, he said her name once, softly, almost fragile. "Mia." She paused, unable to turn around, afraid of what she would do if she saw his face again. After a long moment, Noah whispered, "I am here, if you need me, always." The sincerity in his voice nearly broke her, but she steeled herself, pushed open the door and slipped inside, closing it between them with trembling hands. As the latch clicked, the weight of everything pressed down on her: the video, the comments, the humiliation, the job she had lost, and the man she had pushed away, even though every part of her wanted to pull him close. Outside, Noah remained standing in the hallway, his shadow cast long across the dim floor, until finally he stepped back, swallowed by the empty staircase, carrying with him the sorrow of someone who wanted to save a world that was slipping through his fingers. The morning of the press conference dawned with an icy gray sky stretching over Manhattan, the kind of cold that seeped into concrete and bone and seemed to mirror the heaviness sitting in Noah Grant's chest as he stepped inside the glass building where the merger announcement was supposed to take place. Cameras lined the entrance, journalists clustered behind barricades like restless waves, and the moment he appeared, every lens pointed toward him, firing rapid shots as though trying to carve him into a headline before he even reached the door. Inside the lobby, executives buzzed with the poised nervousness of people who cared more about stock prices than human truths, their clipped greetings echoing across marble floors and bouncing off polished metal columns. But Noah did not hear any of it. All he could hear was the tremor in Mia's voice the night she told him to stop helping her, the way she clutched the doorknob as though it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her fear still clung to him like a shadow, reminding him that power meant nothing if he could not wield it in the moments that mattered. Victoria Hale waited for him outside the conference hall. Her arms crossed her stance, precise and controlled like always. She studied him for a second, her expression unreadable. "Are you prepared?" she asked, voice low. "Investors expect a confident message. If we present uncertainty, the merger will falter." Noah met her gaze evenly. "I am prepared, just not for what they expect." Something flickered in Victoria's expression, a sharp calculation followed by the faintest narrowing of her eyes. "What are you planning?" "Something I should have done earlier," Noah replied before stepping past her. In the green room, assistants fluttered around him, adjusting his jacket, tugging at his tie, handing him briefing cards he did not bother to look at. The host announced his name through the speakers echoing into the packed hall, and Noah walked toward the stage with slow, controlled breaths, ignoring the tight ball of tension twisting through his chest. The applause when he appeared was brisk professional, the sound of people expecting a stable, controlled corporate statement. Noah stood at the podium adjusting the microphone and looked out over the audience, the investors, the donors, the executives, the journalists waiting to dissect every word he spoke. For a moment, the room blurred, fading into shapes and shadows until his vision sharpened, focusing on one memory: the night Mia sat at his table shaking from humiliation, her dignity ripped away by people too wealthy to recognize cruelty. He inhaled. "Thank you all for being here." His voice carried steady, measured, practiced, but underneath the calm, something heavier thrummed quietly, waiting to rise. "We are gathered today to discuss the upcoming merger, but I cannot begin by talking about numbers. Not today." A ripple spread through the hall, murmurs stirring like a shift in the wind. Noah continued. "I want to speak about something else first, something more important." He paused, letting the silence settle before he said her name without saying it, letting the truth land on its own. 2 nights ago, at a gala meant to celebrate generosity, a woman was humiliated publicly for sitting in the wrong seat. The room stilled, every eye snapping toward him, media lenses tilting with sudden interest. She was told she did not belong, Noah said, voice firm. She was spoken to as though worth is measured by wealth. She was mocked for daring to be present. And she was recorded by strangers who saw a moment of cruelty and decided it was entertainment. A hush fell sharp enough to cut through the space. In the front row, Victoria's shoulders stiffened. Noah continued, his tone deepening. "I saw the video. I saw exactly what happened. And let me be clear, she did nothing wrong. The people who mocked her were wrong. The ones who laughed were wrong, and the ones who shared her humiliation online were wrong. Every wrong hung in the air like a gavel striking a courtroom. A journalist raised her camera, capturing the moment as though she sensed a story rewriting itself. Noah's eyes hardened, not with anger, but conviction. Money does not decide who belongs. Titles do not decide who deserves respect. Humanity does. He steadied himself, gripping the podium. I reached for her hand that night because she deserved respect when no one else in the room gave it to her. Not out of charity, not out of pity, but because dignity does not require permission. A wave of whispers rose, but Noah did not waver. The woman in that video faced more online abuse in 48 hours than anyone should endure in a lifetime. And while the world judged her identity or her circumstances, they forgot she is a mother of a child fighting for breath every single day. That child and that mother deserve protection, not ridicule. His voice cracked for a fraction of a second, quickly contained, but the microphone caught the tremor anyway, and the room leaned in. If anyone wishes to question my judgment for defending someone who deserved compassion, then go ahead, Noah said. But make sure you also question why a child's access to medical care depends on charity. Why a woman working 2 jobs cannot afford life-saving treatment for her son. Why humiliation is easier to share than empathy. By now, the hall was silent. Not the poised silence of an orderly event, but heavy, charged silence shaped by the realization that the man at the podium was no longer giving a corporate update. He was taking a stand. Noah took a slow breath, sensing the turning point. If supporting a mother fighting for her child complicates a merger, then perhaps we should question the values driving that merger. His gaze drifted for a moment as though he could see Mia through the walls of the building, through the layers of fear that had kept them apart. I will not remain silent while dignity is put on trial. Not hers, not anyone's. When he stepped back from the microphone, applause erupted, not polite this time, but raw and rising like a tide breaking free. Cameras flashed, capturing a billionaire choosing principle over profit, and the moment traveled through the room as something irreversible, a declaration that would not fade quietly. Somewhere in the Bronx, in a small apartment with worn curtains and warm light, Mia watched the live stream on her phone, hand trembling, covering her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. She listened to his voice, steady, unwavering, defending her in front of the entire country, and something inside her cracked open, soft and painful and full of hope she had tried to bury. Noah Grant had not just taken her hand in a ballroom. He had taken her side before the world, and for the first time since the humiliation began, she felt the weight on her chest lighten, replaced with a fragile flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, she was not standing alone anymore. The video of Noah's speech traveled faster than Mia had ever seen anything spread online, flooding every platform with clips, quotes, reactions, and commentary, all echoing the same stunned refrain that a billionaire had stood before the country and defended a single mother from the Bronx without hesitation, without apology, without protecting himself from the backlash that inevitably followed. Mia watched it once, then twice. Then again with her hands pressed over her trembling mouth as though she could hold the pieces of herself together with her palms alone. She did not know how long she cried, only that each tear carved away a layer of fear, leaving something rawer, something more honest beneath. But with honesty came terror. Because she had pushed him away, because she had told him not to help her, because she had begged him to stop caring, and he had listened. He had respected her even when it broke him. The thought hollowed her out as she sat on the couch beside Eli, who had fallen asleep, drawing another picture of the three of them holding hands. When she touched his tiny fingers, she whispered, "I am trying, baby. I am trying so hard to make the right choices." By nightfall, the apartment had grown quiet again, and for the first time in days, no cameras waited outside, no reporters shouted questions on the stairs. Maybe Noah's words had forced the vultures to scatter, or maybe the world simply moved on, but either way the silence felt foreign too, still too expectant. Mia stood by the window clutching Eli's drawing when she heard soft footsteps outside her door. Steady, purposeful, familiar enough to make her heart lurch against her ribs. She opened the door slowly, half terrified of who might be waiting. But there he was. Noah Grant, standing in the dim hallway without security, without assistance, without cameras. Just him in a dark coat. His hair slightly tousled, his eyes holding that same careful steadiness she had seen in the hospital the night everything changed. "Mia," he said quietly, and the sound of her name in his voice nearly unmade her. She swallowed, gripping the edge of the door. "You should not be here." His expression softened with something fragile, almost hesitant. "I know, but I needed to talk to you, just once, without the world watching." She stepped back, letting him inside because some part of her body moved toward him on instinct even when her mind was still tangled in fear. Noah walked slowly into the small living room, looking around as though absorbing the quiet warmth, and she watched him from behind, feeling the weight of all the words she had forced between them. After a long moment, she whispered, "You should not have said all that today. The country is debating your sanity. Investors are furious. Victoria probably had a heart attack." Noah exhaled a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but heavy with truth. "I did not say it for them. I said it because it was the truth." Mia closed her eyes. "Truth does not protect people like us. Truth does not pay my rent or get Eli medicine or keep cameras away from his school." Noah turned toward her, his gaze steady. "You deserve protection. You and Eli, and I will not apologize for saying so." She shook her head and her voice cracking. "That is the problem. Every time you help me, the world sees something ugly that is not there. They twist it. They twist me. And I cannot let Eli get caught in that." Noah moved closer, stopping only when he sensed she needed space. "I understand your fear. I understand your instinct to protect him above all else. But do not believe for 1 second that any of this is your fault. None of it." She opened her eyes, meeting his stare, and the pain in her chest rose like a tide threatening to drown her. "You are a billionaire, Noah. People will always think I want something from you, and I cannot live under that judgment. I cannot raise Eli under it." Noah's jaw tightened, but not with anger, with determination. "Then you need to know something. I do not want anything from you. I do not need anything from you." His voice softened, then deepened into something quieter, more vulnerable. "Except for the chance to stand beside you if you let me." The air between them shifted heavy, warm, and trembling with something she had refused to let herself feel until now. Her voice came out barely audible. "Why me?" Noah stepped closer, one slow, measured step at a time. "Because when I walked into that ballroom and saw you being humiliated, you did not shrink. You stood up. You protected your dignity even when no one else did. Because you walked into a world that tried to spit you back out just to fight for your son. Because you work until your body aches and you still find a way to smile at him like the sun rises for him alone." His gaze softened, fully unguarded. "And because being near you makes me feel like the world is still human." Mia's breath trembled, the truth in his voice slipping past every wall she had built. "But I am scared," she whispered. "I am terrified of what you make me feel. I do not know how to exist in your world." Noah shook his head slowly. "Then we will not exist in my world. We will exist in ours. No cameras, no expectations, no pressure, only what you choose." Mia felt her heart pull toward him like tide to moon, but she held her breath, pressing fingertips against her chest. "You cannot promise that. You cannot promise the world will stay out of this." Noah nodded. "You are right. I cannot promise that. But I can promise one thing." He lifted his hand slightly. "I will never let my world swallow yours, not unless you choose it." She stared at his hand, not touching yet, waiting, offering, not demanding, and something inside her finally cracked open, fully soft enough to feel the truth she had been afraid of. Slowly, with a trembling inhale, she stepped closer, closing the distance inch by inch, until she was near enough to feel the warmth from his skin. Her hand hovered trembling above his for a long, fragile moment, and then she placed her fingers in his palm, barely touching, but enough to make Noah exhale a breath that sounded almost like relief, like gratitude, like the first hopeful note of something beginning. He closed his fingers gently around hers, not claiming, not pulling, simply holding the way someone holds something breakable and precious. When she looked up at him, she whispered the truth that had been growing inside her since the night he defended her in front of the world. "I choose this. Not because I need you, not because you saved us, but because you respect me." Noah's eyes softened with something so deep she had to look away. "Respect is where love begins," he murmured, echoing words he had spoken before. She felt her pulse flutter fast but steady. "Then maybe this is a beginning." Noah squeezed her hand, the smallest, warmest promise. "Only if you want it to be." She tightened her fingers around his. "I do." And for the first time she did not feel like the woman who had been laughed at in a ballroom. She felt like someone who finally belonged somewhere in the quiet, steady warmth of the hand that held hers. For the first time in months, Mia woke up without that familiar tightness curled beneath her ribs, the kind that made every morning feel like a battle she was already losing. Instead, she woke to the soft hum of her small Bronx apartment, the faint clatter of Eli rifling through his crayons, and the quiet knowledge that Noah would be stopping by after work. Not with flowers, not with grand gestures, but with books for Eli or takeout containers. They would eat straight from the box because that was the kind of life they were slowly building. Not glamorous, not staged, just real. It began with small choices, the kind that seemed insignificant until they formed a pattern. Noah never asked her to visit his penthouse even once. He never hinted she should dress differently or talk differently, or be anything other than exactly who she was. Each evening he simply arrived at her door lightly knocking as though he did not want to disturb the world behind it, and when she opened the door he would offer a tired smile, the kind worn by someone who had spent a day in war rooms full of executives before finding peace in the quiet glow of an apartment that smelled faintly of detergent and cinnamon from Eli's favorite cereal. One evening, Eli ran straight into Noah's legs, practically tackling him with excitement, and Noah laughed, kneeling down so he and the boy could be eye to eye. "What are we reading tonight, buddy?" Eli held up a library book about space rockets, his grin wide and gap-toothed. "Can we do the voices again?" Noah saluted him. "Only if you promise not to judge my alien accent." Mia caught herself watching them longer than she intended, her heart folding in around the picture of Noah sitting cross-legged on her living room floor, reading with dramatic flair, as Eli giggled so hard he fell sideways against Noah's arm. Noah looked up at her, once his eyes soft with a warmth that said, "I am here. I want to be here," and she felt something settle inside her, something she had not felt in years. Safety without condition. Outside their little world, the merger talk stabilized surprisingly quickly. Victoria Hale, who had once viewed Mia as a risk, now found herself tracking public sentiment and discovering something unexpected. People admired Noah for speaking up. The brand looked more human. Investors praised his transparency. When she eventually approached Noah one afternoon, she did so with less steel in her tone and more reluctant acceptance. "It appears the country likes you better when you act like a person," she said dryly. Noah raised a brow. "I have always been a person, Victoria." She looked at him, then at the photo on his desk, Eli in hospital pajamas holding Noah's hand while Mia slept in a chair beside them, the image taken by an ER nurse and shared online with a caption about compassion. Her expression softened half an inch. "They mattered to you. It was not a question. It was a realization." Noah answered without hesitation. "Yes." Victoria nodded, once the stiff kind of nod given by someone adjusting to a truth they cannot fight. "Then let us use that humanity responsibly." The media storm died faster than Mia expected, replaced by quieter stories about the family assistance program she worked with, profiles about the challenges of low-income single parents, and op-eds praising Noah for highlighting dignity in healthcare. And through all of it, Mia did not move to a luxury apartment or ride in private cars or adopt any of the glitter Noah's world had to offer. She still took the subway, still shopped coupons, still lived in the same apartment with the same peeling paint in the hallway because leaving it felt like abandoning the life she had fought so hard to build. Noah never pushed her to change anything. Instead, he arrived at her door at the end of long days, his tie loosened exhaustion in his shoulders but something softer in his eyes every time he saw her. They built a routine from scratch. Thursday nights were pizza nights, with Eli insisting they each choose a different topping and Noah dutifully pretending pineapple on pizza was not a personal attack. Sunday afternoons were for walking in the small park behind their block where Noah once confessed, "You know, I never knew quiet could feel like a privilege." And Mia replied softly, "Quiet is where people show who they really are." On rainy days, they visited the tiny bookstore near the corner where the owner, an elderly man with thick glasses, always set aside children's books for Eli. One afternoon, as they browsed the aisles, Mia caught Noah watching her, not with hunger, not with possession, but with a kind of reverence that made her chest tighten. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she whispered. "Because you move through the world like you expect it to hit you," he answered gently. "And still, you get back up." She did not know how to respond, so she simply reached for his hand. He intertwined their fingers lightly in a way that felt more intimate than any kiss could. It was these small choices that shaped their story. Choices rooted not in wealth or spectacle, but in presence and mutual respect. The world still whispered sometimes because people always whispered, but the noise around them mattered less each day. Eli's health stabilized with regular medication. Noah quietly covering the cost only after Mia finally agreed, but only under one condition, that her contribution was included, even if it was symbolic. "If this is a team effort," she had insisted, "I get to stand on my part of the ground." Noah smiled softly. "Then we build on it together." When Mia began working at a nonprofit family support foundation, it was during a meeting where she spoke passionately about parents who fall through the cracks, how hard they work, how invisible they become. The director looked at her, then at her resume, then at her fire, and simply said, "We need people who speak like that." Noah did not take credit, and Mia knew he never would, because he had not rescued her. He had stood beside her until she was ready to walk forward on her own. One night, as she locked the front door after seeing Noah out, she felt her heart swell with quiet certainty, the kind that did not shout or declare itself with fireworks. just a simple, steady truth resting in her chest like warm light. "You respected me first," she whispered through the door, and love grew from that. The next morning, when Noah knocked again with coffee for her and chocolate milk for Eli, she opened the door with a smile that held no fear, no hesitation, only the gentle acceptance of a life built with quiet choices and the man who chose it with her. 1 year later, the chandeliers at the Waldorf Astoria glowed just as brightly as the night Mia had first stumbled beneath them, but everything else felt impossibly different. The air no longer tasted of fear. The room no longer hummed with quiet cruelty. And Mia Turner no longer walked in like an intruder trying not to be noticed. She stepped through the entrance in a deep emerald dress, simple, elegant, borrowed again but from a friend this time, not a rental shop. Her hair was pinned loosely, her hands trembling only slightly as she held Eli's tiny fingers with one hand and the program booklet with the other. She had been invited tonight not as a mistake and not as a seat filler, but as an honored guest recognized for the work she had done with the Family Resilience Foundation, where she now managed outreach programs for single parents navigating medical instability. Her name printed on the program had felt unreal when she first saw it. The black ink, a kind of validation she had once believed would never be hers to claim. And then there was Noah. He stood at her side, his suit tailored his presence unmistakable yet somehow softer than he used to be. A year of choosing a different kind of life had changed him too. He carried less armor now. Fewer walls, his edges rounded by evenings. Reading storybooks, cooking pasta badly in Mia's kitchen, and choosing a world that made him feel more like a person than a brand. When they entered together, the entire ballroom shifted, a ripple of recognition moving through the crowd, but for the first time, Mia did not shrink beneath the attention. Instead, she lifted her chin, feeling her pulse settle into something steady and grounded. Eli tugged her hand and pointed toward the enormous floral centerpiece on the main stage, whispering in awe, "Mom, look at the big flowers." She laughed, quietly smoothing the collar of his tiny button-down shirt. "They are beautiful, baby." Noah offered his hand slightly, palm up. Waiting, not assuming, and she slipped her fingers into his without hesitation. They walked to their assigned table near the stage, a table marked "Reserved for Award Recipients," and the sight made Mia's throat tighten. A year ago, people had laughed when she sat at a billionaire's table. Tonight, she was sitting at her own. As they settled into their seats, several donors approached to greet Noah, but tonight their eyes shifted to Mia with something different from the judgment she remembered. Respect, curiosity, even admiration. One woman put a gentle hand on Mia's arm and said, "Your speech in Denver changed the way our board thinks about single mothers. You are doing important work." Mia blinked, stunned, but managed a soft, "Thank you. It means a lot." When the gala program began, a video montage played across the screens showcasing families the foundation had supported over the past year, and Mia felt tears prick her eyes, recognizing faces she had met in clinics and community centers. Mothers she had sat beside fathers. She had helped translate medical jargon for children. She had hugged when medications ran out. Then the host announced the final award of the night, the Community Impact Honor. And Mia froze, because the name printed beneath the title was hers. The applause that rose felt like a wave curling gently around her, not crashing, not overwhelming, just carrying her upward. Noah squeezed her hand once, a grounding silent, "I am here," then released it so she could stand. Eli practically bounced in his seat, clapping wildly, shouting, "Go, Mom!" which made the entire table smile. Mia walked toward the stage, her legs trembling but her heart astonishingly calm. When she reached the podium, the host handed her the award, a glass sculpture shaped like an open hand lifting a smaller one. The symbolism hit her so hard she had to inhale slowly before speaking. She looked out at the ballroom, not at the chandeliers or the gowns or the icy smiles she once feared, but at the faces of the people who were finally listening. She took a breath. "A year ago, I walked into a room like this and felt like I did not belong. I felt small, invisible, out of place. Tonight, I stand here because someone reminded me that dignity does not belong to the wealthy or the powerful. It belongs to every human being." Mia paused, her gaze drifting instinctively toward Noah, who watched her with the kind of pride that softened every sharp memory she still carried. And because that reminder changed me, I now spend my days reminding others, especially parents who feel forgotten or ashamed or alone, that they matter, that their battles matter, that their families deserve hope. Her voice wavered. I am here tonight because kindness can change a life. Respect can rebuild a broken one. And love, the quiet, steady kind, can make a home where there was once only fear. When she finished, the room rose to its feet in a standing ovation that blurred through her tears. She stepped away from the microphone, barely holding herself together as she descended the stage steps, gripping the glass award to her chest. Eli ran toward her, nearly tripping, and threw his arms around her waist, shouting, "Mommy won." She laughed through tears, hugging him close. "Yes, baby, we won." Noah approached slowly, giving her space to breathe before brushing a tear from her cheek with the back of his knuckle. "You were extraordinary," he murmured. She smiled up at him, a soft, grateful, radiant smile. "You taught me that I belonged." Noah shook his head gently. "No, Mia. You always belonged. You just needed the world to see it." Eli tugged their hands together and said, "Come on, we sit together this time, just like I drew." Mia laughed, looking down at the little boy who had unknowingly painted their future long before either adult dared to imagine it. They walked back to the table, hand in hand with Eli skipping ahead, and as they sat down, the cameras clicked, catching the image of the three of them silhouetted beneath the golden light, a small family unit formed not by wealth or status, but by the quiet choices that had carried them forward. Mia looked around the room, feeling none of the fear she once had. Instead, she felt rooted, steady, warm. "This time, I know I belong," she whispered. Noah took her hand beneath the table, his thumb brushing her knuckles. And this time, the whole room knew it too. If you are still here listening to Mia's journey, then take a moment, just one quiet breath, because what you just witnessed was not a fairy tale built on perfection or wealth or glittering chandeliers. It was a story about dignity, about second chances, about choosing respect over spectacle and love over fear. And if any part of her journey touched you or reminded you of someone in your life, then this is the moment I want to speak directly to you. Stories like this one do not just entertain. They remind us of the power we hold in the smallest choices, the ones no one sees. The choice to defend someone who is being humiliated. The choice to stand beside someone instead of standing above them. The choice to believe that love grows not from luxury, but from kindness. And if those choices moved you, if you found yourself cheering for Mia or hoping for Noah or smiling when Eli held their hands, then I want to personally invite you to become part of this community, the one I am building with you with every story I release. This channel is more than a place to listen to drama or heartbreak or redemption. It is a home for people who believe in quiet strength, in real love and redemption arcs, and in second chances that ignite something deeper inside us. So here is what you can do right now if you want to help these stories reach even more people who need them. First, tap like. It seems small, almost invisible, but it tells the algorithm, hey, people care about stories that lift others up. That matters more than you know. Second, subscribe if you have not already, so you never miss another story like this one. I promise you more journeys filled with emotional undulation, more characters who fight for dignity, more romance that grows slowly, carefully, beautifully, in the spaces most people overlook. Third, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that being seen is powerful, that being respected is healing, that love, the real kind, shows up quietly and consistently just like Noah did for Mia and Eli. Maybe they are a single parent. Maybe they are rebuilding after heartbreak. Maybe they are just trying to survive another day in a world that can feel too heavy. You never know whose life might soften because you shared a story. And lastly, I want to hear from you in the comments. This is the part I love most. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me which moment hit your heart the hardest. Was it the humiliation in the ballroom? Was it the hospital night? Was it the hand she finally took when she chose respect over fear? Or was it that moment in the epilogue when Mia walked on stage not as a shadow, but as a woman who finally knew she belonged? I read your comments every single day, and your words shape the next story I write. You are not just viewers. You are part of how these stories come to life. So tell me your city, your state, your country. Tell me something about your journey, your hope, your healing. And if you stayed until the end of this story, let me know by commenting one word. Belong, because that is the message I hope travels far beyond this video. Thank you for being here, for supporting this channel, for believing in stories that remind us of our humanity. And if you are new, welcome to the family. I cannot wait to share the next story with you. Until then, be kind to someone today, even in a quiet way. You never know what door it might open. If you are ready for the next story, just say, "Next story, please."